All right, hello, welcome everybody. Welcome to Talkin Investing. Got Tom and George here. We got a bunch of stuff today. It was a red day. I got the wrong list up here. Let's put the right one. It was a red day for the Bitcoin and the high performance computing stocks. I think that's going to be our new name for these stocks. It was not a good day for Bitcoin. It was not a great day for cryptocurrency. I didn't see any good reason why any of that happened, but we're going to go through all of it. We did get some data from the federal government, so we'll go through that as well. That's trickling in. It's months late because the government shut down, but better late than never, I guess. So a lot to talk about. What are you thinking about, George? Anything?
I'm not thinking about nothing.
Just trying to keep your eyes closed.
All I know is, did we have a full moon? And nothing? Full moon and nothing.
It was a full moon fake out.
I think it was yesterday, the 4th, yeah. I think, everybody's nervous about what's going to happen on the 10th. That's what everybody's waiting for now.
I mean, you would think, right. And so the 10th is the day the Fed decides, or at least they tell us what they're going to do. And 2 o'clock Eastern time, they put their memo out, so we know what they've done. But a lot of times, more importantly, a half an hour later, Jerome Powell gives a speech and takes questions. That's where the market sometimes tanks. Even when the Fed's done just exactly what we thought it was going to do and just exactly what we want it to do, he is such a... I'm just going to say he's very negative intentionally to try. He doesn't want what they're doing to help the stock market. And so I just feel like you can almost bank on the fact that we'll take a look, but I mean, it's built in at this point. It would be a shocker if they don't cut rates. So I think we're going to get a quarter basis point rate cut, and we're going to get boogeyman inflation talk the rest of the time. That's, and I don't know which way we're going to go in the short term. This is the great mystery. Which way is the market going in the short? I'm talking about the short term now till the end of the year. They're really throwing curveballs at us, in my opinion.
I'm telling you, Tom, for some reason, I'm 100% calm and not nervous and not scared and not worried. But it is troubling.
It's if you're checking your portfolio 15 times a day, you're probably going crazy right now, I guess is what I would say. And so I am really trying very hard to step back, look at the big picture. I'm doing due diligence on stuff, but I'm not focusing on my portfolio because the fluctuations have been so radical for me this year, but I haven't sold anything really. Made one trade in the middle of the year. And other than that, I've been just dollar cost averaging in. So because I do not think we're at the end of this cycle. We'll talk more about that because a growing number of people think the 4-year cycle is over. I've got some articles going both ways on that situation, and then we can vote. Gambit Beer says 7 p.m. Irish time. All right. You guys are 5 hours ahead of us.
This day is 2 dates, and I'm not going to tell you why. The 10th, for obvious reason, and then the 18th.
The 10th and the mystery date being the 18th. Are we going to get a Christmas rally? Or is December going to be a big disappointment? Is the fourth quarter going to be a big disappointment? Because everybody was so worried about September, but it's okay because the fourth quarter is going to be awesome. And
I think it's like this time, we're 4th and 12, and everybody thinks we're not going to make it.
Yeah. But we're, but I think we're going to.
Yeah, me too. We just, guys, this is the whole thing. We don't know the time. And obviously they can play more games, for the next whatever number of days so that you miss it. But I have a feeling whenever it happens, it's going to be life changing, at least for me. It already is life changing. I've been trying to measure ropes lately. Be hung like the Christmas on the ornaments of the Christmas tree.
Larry thinks we're going to get a Christmas rally. Well, that would be nice. I still, I mean, if you look at the technicals, which we'll do, some of my normal ones that I look at, just the very basic technical analysis, I still think everything's set up for a nice little run here. But this is like the third or fourth time we've gotten to this point, and then it doesn't do, it doesn't finish, doesn't follow through. So we'll see. Today, I mean, other than Core Scientific, which was up 0.18%, everything else was red. Things did get a little better in the afternoon, but a lot of stuff got decimated today. I mean, Marathon down 5.6%, Riot down 4%, Cleanspark down almost 9%, IREN down 3.75%. Somebody very important came out and said, sell IREN. So we'll get to that later as well. Not financial advice. I didn't sell my IREN. Somebody said to. BitDR down 6%, Bitfarms down almost 6%, Hive down 6%, ABTC down almost 8%, but that did have that, I'm going to call it a fake crash. ABTC, and we are still in price discovery territory for ABTC. It's a brand new publicly traded company. These things tend to be overvalued. They tend to get wrecked from their initial, I mean, in this case, it wasn't an IPO, but it was a merger to go public. Griffin, which was just a tiny market cap Bitcoin miner. So that just happened a few months ago. So we're all over the place. I mean, ABTC is down radically. There was a day this week where it was down. At one point in the middle of the day, it was down 50% on the day. It finished, I think, down maybe 38% on the day. But I will say, George, you want to tell them what you did about it?
What? What'd I do?
ABTC.
I bought. And I bought at $2. I said at the time, I'm buying it $2. I actually bought below 2. And then I said, if it goes lower, gonna buy more.
And at the time, it had been a couple of pennies lower. I think you got in at $1.98, but that's close enough to the bottom. And it rallied big time, but it did lose some momentum today. But everything got killed today. Sour Melon Gaming, ABTC is garbage. Sell that junk, George. Love you.
I'm going to tell you, I'm also predicting Hive to $100. Just don't know what year it's going to be.
Hive to 100. George is on record now for that. That's his call. But
I'm crazy call. These are crazy, but I mean,
are you talking about 2050 or are you talking about 20? You don't know if it's going to be 2026 or 2027.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to be that long, but I mean, Hive to, the dollar might lose a lot of its value, but you know what I mean? But I just think it's a good setup. I think there's just so much FUD out there. It's not even funny. But someone said it probably the best I've ever heard is we are at a tipping point in America. I don't know if it's going to work out or it's going to go one of two ways, either really good or really bad. And I think that can be said with crypto. That could be said with the stock market. It could be said with almost anything when you start to really peel back the onion.
Well, change is happening so rapidly now that, right, the thing that was the most important thing that's ever happened in the history of the world that was going to change anything, nobody even remembers 3 years later anymore, because there have been 5 new things. Right now it's AI. And I'm going to revisit one of those old ones today. Let's see if I can. Give me 30 seconds to see if I can.
Somebody just asked my price prediction with XRP as you do that, Tom. Here's what I think is going to happen with XRP when it happens, but it might go to $1.65 before this happens. So at $1.65, it's going to double, and then you're never going to see it come back down.
This is your XRP?
Yep, it's going to double, but I don't expect it to do what these other people are expecting it to do, because it won't. I think it's going to get to a certain number and stay there, and I think that they know how to do that because they own so much of XRP. But XRP's already been a winner for me.
Yeah, you dollar cost averaged in when it was pennies. So
yeah, I love XRP. I won't probably sell. But
you may never sell that.
Right. But I think, again, it will at some point in time, it will go ballistic and double, and then it will never come back. But remember, that's not out of the realm of possibilities, because it was $3.92 at one point in time.
Yeah, and we've had $5 price targets, $6 price targets, $10 price targets, and then you got some outliers out there. There have been more than one article, $100, $1,000. I know I'm not even going there, but I'm saying, to think that it could get to $5 or $6 or maybe even $10, I think that's totally realistic. Listen, we haven't even begun. I mean, XRP got a run. They kind of 10x'd already. But remember, that is because the United States government had their thumb on them. It was against the law to even buy XRP in the U.S. for years. So that situation is 100% resolved. That's the game changer that took it to where it is, not altcoin season. So we still have that run. Either you think there's going to be no altcoin season, or that's still coming. And that can be, like George talked about, that can happen very fast. So you got to be paying attention. And, with the altcoins, have your plan. Know when you're going to take your profits, because in the past, they have disappeared quickly. So I think XRP is going to at least double from where it is right now. I think that's very modest expectation. I got to look at the poll because it looks like we're split 50-50 again. Is the bull market over this cycle for Bitcoin? Holy cow. 51% say the bull market is over. Well, there you go. And could we get any closer? This has been the most confusing cycle, and it's because if you look at what's going on, is just not acting like the previous cycles. You can point to certain things that are the same, but there's so many this never happened before situations in the last 2 years with Bitcoin. I think there's very good reason to believe that this is different. And this poll is bouncing back and forth between yes and no, so I'm going to leave it up for a minute. Gambit Beer is asking, did you make any progress on ABTC shares being unlocked? Yeah, and it is what I looked into. There were no shares unlocked. That was all. That's why I say it was a false. ABTC dropped 40% in one day. And it had, I think, 20 times its average daily volume. I'm gonna go look. And it was all on rumors that there was going to be an unlock and all the insiders were going to dump their stock. Well, that was on StockTwits. It was on Reddit, before the market opened. And somehow, word travels fast, because the next thing you knew, that thing was tanking, and then, you know, who knows if algorithms start to hit in or stop losses start to kick in, because it dropped like a rock. And then it spent the rest of the day clawing its way back a little bit. I think it got from down 50% to down 38% by the end of the day, which is still a nightmare. Now, having said all that, I think it's probably a lot closer to its fair value after that crash than before. But that crash happened on false news. I'm gonna find. Just want to show you the volume, because this is staggering. You very rarely see this kind of volume differential. And usually usually that's capitulation. So that's the bottom, that's the end, or if it's at a high, that's the top, that's the end, whatever the case may be. And I'm going to go to historical data because it's going to jump off the page. Taking a second. And while we're doing that, if you guys could do us a gigantic favor and please smash the like button, the thumbs up button. It does help the stream in real time. People are discouraged right now. They're down. And they got to get over here and get with the program. So now we're getting a little bit of a shift in this poll. Now no is winning. But it's gone back and forth. We'll leave it up for like 5 minutes and see where it ends. Vote if you can. Smash the like button if you can. And then I want to show you this here. Okay, so this is ABTC. This column is their daily volume. So you can see this is a company that was, you know, pick a day. This was a high day, 4.2 million shares, 3.5, 2.6, 3.6, 5.2, 3.5. And you'll see where I'm going with this. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, 88 million shares. 88 million. Not 2 million, not 3 million, not a weird, you know, high day where it's 5 million. 88 million. That is astounding. And the next day, still 40 million. And now you can see it's trailing off 24, 17. And this is going to work its way back down to what it used to be. This 88 million shares was on fake news. So there's 2 lockup periods. One ends in March. And then actually, let's see if I can find the article on that, because I something else queued up. Tangent from my tangent. Trump-backed American Bitcoin plunges 40% on heavy volume. When we just looked at it, heavy volume is an understatement. I mean, we were watching this in real time. It was mind-boggling. Dragging HUT 8 lower by 12%. Remember, HUT 8 is the major majority shareholder in ABTC. The Trump brothers are involved in this, but they address this. So you'll see the bullet points. American Bitcoin tumbled as much as 50% on major trading volume on Tuesday, on no apparent news. The decline spread to previously hot-handed HUT 8, the majority owner of ABTC. Okay, so HUT 8 had a bad day on that day as well, obviously. A check of the SEC filings, and for those of you who are members, you know, I did this on that day and looked myself, and so they're verifying. A check of the SEC filings show nearly all major holders are restricted from selling until 2026. And then this goes on to say, American Bitcoin, a U.S.-focused Bitcoin mining and treasury firm founded by Eric and Donald Trump, but it's really mainly the main shareholder is HUT 8. but they specifically address somewhere in here. Okay, so speculation on the massive share price drop was around potential insider lockup selling. SEC filings, though, show a 180-day lockup that restricts most historical ABTC holders from selling until March 3rd, 2026, but a separate 12-month investor rights agreement imposes a standstill through September 3rd, 2026 for Eric and Donald.
Yeah, it's Junior, by the way, if you read that.
Don Jr., that's right. This is Don
Right.
Jr. This is the... And again, everybody thinks it's their company, but I mean, really, it's Hut 8's company. Obviously, they're big shareholders, but both of them put together have only maybe a third of what Hut 8 has in there.
And then supposedly Grant Cardone is in this too, really deep, if anybody knows who that is.
He is, and I lost the article. He came out with some comments.
That would usually tank anything.
But the reality is, so, you know, the world was screaming X, and every place was another Trump rug pull. And like, I'm not going to get into politics, and some of you guys probably think Donald Trump is great, and some of you guys probably think he's the worst thing that's ever happened in the history of time. That tends to be one opinion or the other. Congratulations if you're indifferent. You're in a very small group. But the point is, whatever this was, it was not a Trump rug pull, because Eric and Donald aren't even allowed to sell their shares for still almost another year. So we know for sure they did not sell any of their shares. And in fact, none of the owners, Hut 8 didn't sell any of its shares. The previous existing holders prior to the merger weren't allowed to sell their shares. So the lockup period goes on. Now, we'll see what happens on March 2nd, right? Because March 3rd that's the big unlock. So, but we're many months away from that. So that's a big event that is looming, and that can decimate. I remember when Fubo reached its unlock date, it crashed. It was at $60 or $70. It crashed and it never came back. So, you know, that's always a date you should know. When does that lockup end? Because the entire game can change, and it can take a long time to recover or never recover. It's different with every company, obviously, depending on the circumstances. But that's what happened. This is what happened, and the reality is nothing happened other than there was a giant rumor, and the stock traded almost 90 million shares and crashed.
Whoever started that rumor got right back in at $2.
Oh, there's no question. These things, this is when we talk about the stock market's manipulated, like this is an example. It's not some wild conspiracy of a bunch of people with cigars in a locked room. This is manipulation, right? All those shareholders were manipulated into panicking, right? Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So they all sold their stock. And George got to buy it at half price. So
maybe he said the smartest thing. If it wasn't for IREN this cycle, this room might be empty.
Yeah, IREN, CIFR, there's 2 or 3 that have done well, and a lot of the rest haven't. Let's go right to IREN, because give me just a second. We got a real important call on IREN.
I called you out last week, by the way.
Huh?
No, I'm just looking at the people in the chat.
Oh. That's the
The
one I was
4-year
gonna...
cycle looks really clear. It does. Cycle burn time. I agree, Brent. I mean, it does look really
right.
good, but I just don't think it's going to end up that way by the end of the cycle. Oh, here's Sour going. Sour, we should have a poll. What's going to go lower, Bitfarms or ABTC?
Sour Melon Gaming has very strong feelings on Bitfarms and ABTC. You think it's going to under $1? From a market cap standpoint, I'm not. I've said from the beginning, we're in price discovery territory. This stock, it didn't make. It had a bigger market cap last month than Marathon did, which just doesn't make any sense at any level. So this correction was coming, but you get weird, if everything pumps, I think this will pump with it. That's how it usually goes. We'll have to come back to that when I stumble across it. But I do want to this is the article I was going to go to 15 minutes ago when we're talking about the latest revolutionary, gonna change the world, nothing will ever be the same. We've had more of those in the last 5 years than we had in the 500 years before that. People are hyping things to an extent that's crazy. Having said that, Bill Gates said that AI is the biggest technology boom and change in the history of technology. And, he was obviously in on the ground floor of the computer, the personal computer, the disk operating system. And Microsoft is still the third or fourth largest company in the world. Within the last 24 months, it's had its turn at number one. It's been somewhere around the largest company in the world for 25 years. And even Bill Gates said, you know what, this thing coming now, this is even bigger. So, but here's something that was not bigger. Meta plans a 30% cut to their Metaverse budget as reality becomes less virtual. Horizon Worlds and Quest are facing layoffs as Meta retreats further from its $70 billion bet on virtual reality. People familiar with the matter told Bloomberg. Meta is considering cutting up to 30% of its Metaverse division budget in 2026. If I was them, I'd cut 100% of it, with layoffs expected to follow, Bloomberg reports. The company's virtual reality unit, including Quest headsets and Horizon Worlds, is likely to face the steepest reductions. Slower than expected industry adoption. That is the understatement in the history of time. Slower than expected adoption. They put money into something thinking they were by now going to have hundreds, maybe tens of millions to hundreds of millions of users. And there were days where there was like 12 users. I mean, this was the biggest miss I've ever seen on anything. And their stock crashed on this. You got to, and subsequent to that, it has gone to the moon. But if you guys remember when Zuckerberg came out with that wacky video about the future and the metaverse, their stock was at like $70. I mean, it crashed.
I remember it.
And then the next quarter, it was like, what's happening? The next quarter, they came out and they were like, well, we're laying off 11,000 people. We're focusing on the bottom line. We're going to make money. It was like a different person, a different company, a different business plan. And then the stock ever since has been skyrocketing, and they do make a lot of money. But this whole metaverse thing, I was on record at the time, and I will stick with my pick. The metaverse is a tiny niche thing that is really going to serve no practical purpose ever, in my opinion. And I know some of you are out there probably thinking, "Oh, you don't get it."
You don't get it. If you say ever, you don't get it.
Ever. It's not. People are not going to sit in their rooms and live and live.
I don't agree with that. I think they are. I think they already do.
Because it's not. I'm not saying people won't work from home virtually, but they're not going to work at home virtually in the metaverse. I mean, remember, this was explained as, oh, you're going to have your desk. You'll go in and you'll say hello to Susan as you walk by her in the hall. And no, that's.
Well, you know what's funny? You hit on the nail on the head of why I call it Yak Yak US. And then I say grow your pack, because I believe we all travel in packs. I believe you should never be alone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I believe, so this is why my wife said, why'd you cheat on me? And I said, because I love the one I'm with. Love the one you're with.
You just took a radical left turn from your point.
Love the one you're with. That's all I'm saying.
That's that. I've heard that before.
And I would never cheat on my wife. Did you see me wink? I couldn't do it. I have a guilty conscience.
And I'll address Gambit Beer because I did specifically say, he said, to be fair, Tom also didn't like AI. So I will tell you, as it pertains to the Bitcoin miners, when they first started to diversify into AI, I mean, you can go back and watch my videos. So Gambit Beer is correct. I was very skeptical of what their success was going to be. But and AI, that's a different topic, but high performance computing at this point, what people call AI, and it's just not. That was a lot of what I talked about is what we call AI is just factually, it's just not AI. It's now they've tried to create 5 other terms defining it, and really it's high performance computing, right? It's predictive algorithms and that kind of stuff. There is no intelligence behind any of it. None of the large language models have intelligence. Their sum total of intelligence is 0. So that's my point on AI. And if they scale them up 10,000 times from where they are today, the sum total of their intelligence is still going to be 0. If you understand how they work, there's no intelligence isn't even a part of the equation. They are working on different things that basically they're not even crawling on yet, where they're trying to work on intelligence, but that continues to elude the entire computer programming universe. But and I think the language, don't get me wrong, I use them all the time. I think they're one of the greatest tools ever created. So I think they're extremely useful. High performance computing, large language models, all of that is absolutely the future. And that was my point earlier when I said, even Bill Gates is saying, listen, this is the future. So the niche that these guys have pulled out by locking down power agreements, and they had to do this because they were Bitcoin miners. So the Bitcoin miners went through this crisis, high performance computing / AI / whatever you want to call it. It's going through an energy crisis, and it hasn't even started yet. Well, Bitcoin already did this, right? The Bitcoin miners 4 years ago faced this existential problem. And when Marathon was gearing up and they were asset light and they didn't own the facilities, they paid somebody to host their machines. And there were some companies that got ahead of that curve and said, nah, this isn't going to work after the halving unless we are vertically integrated from top to bottom. And so they went out and locked up a lot of power contracts, and they continue to do so. And those are, the reality now is, now we're getting contracts. 2 years ago, all this movement and activity was on hype. There wasn't a single contract that had gone to any of these companies. Then Core Scientific got one contract, and it was a big one from CoreWeave, but still nobody else had one. But now 2025 was different. We've had a steady stream of very solid contracts, and lately they've been from the Amazons and Googles of the world and Microsofts of the world. So you're seeing those kind of players tap, our list of stocks to host and run their high performance computing. So I do think that's how it's played out. The ones that IREN, that is why IREN has lapped the field multiple times, because they're just ahead of everybody else. You'll see these companies have all tried to do whatever they can to distance themselves from even talking about Bitcoin. So they are Bitcoin miners. Most of their revenue still, for most of these companies, somewhere between 90 and 99% of their revenue is still from mining Bitcoin. That's going to start to change in 2026, and it's going to dramatically change in 2027. And I'm better late than never, and I'm very fortunate because I got a chance to buy IREN on a gigantic dip. So even though I was late, I was fortunate to get in at $6, and it immediately just took off. The good news started rolling in, and they haven't looked back. So and
you think it could ever get back down there, Tom?
I don't think so. I think this is I didn't get a chance to buy any, and I had a strategy that I was going to try and get some with, but the next day it went up too much and I couldn't do it. But I'm not dollar cost. My dollar cost average is $6. I'm not dollar cost averaging in at $40 or $45. And some of you might say, well, that doesn't make sense, because if you think it's going to double or triple, you should still buy in. I can't do it. I can't up 500 or 600 or 700%. I'm not going to start dollar cost averaging it. I'm buying other things that you probably think I'm crazy. I'm still buying Marathon because I think they're outrageously underpriced. People have the hate on Marathon. Zacks just came out, and I don't have this article up, but I'm going to sum it up. Zacks gave Marathon an F on growth. Now, you could give Marathon an F on various things based on what your opinion is. Maybe you don't like management. Maybe you don't like their CapEx spending. Maybe you don't like management compensation. Whatever the case may be. One thing you cannot give them an F on is growth. They're one of the highest growth companies in the entire stock market, along with most of the rest of these companies. So to give them an F on growth, and I had a long talk with, speaking of large language models, I had a long talk with two of the large language models trying to get to the bottom of, like, how could they possibly justify, what is their equation that they can say this ultra high growth company gets an F on growth? But that's how much people hate Marathon, and everybody, that's what's going on. It's a I hate Marathon fest right now, but that's when you buy, or that's when I buy. And, we'll see if it pays off. So I'm still buying Marathon. I'm still buying now. And this is not financial advice. I'm not recommending you guys do all this, but I'll just tell you, I'm still buying Marathon and I'm still buying BitDeer. And later I'll show you a chart as to why those two are the ones that I still feel are the most beaten down, unfairly beaten down at this point. So just to finish this metaverse off, slower than expected industry adoption and shifting tech priorities have pushed Meta to scale back its once flagship investment. Remember, that video came along with the announcement that they were no longer Facebook, they were Meta because of the metaverse. That was years ago.
I almost believe they do things like this with like hedge funds or major investors to screw people out of money. Does that make sense?
I have to look back on the series of events where I'll pull up the chart.
Because Meta, I mean, that thing, if you were retail, you ran from this stock. I mean, it crashed by what, 50%?
Oh, wait for
60?
it. I'm going to bring
Okay.
up the 1 week.
Damn it. I'd give Sue a D.
So
Make myself laugh.
at least,
Oh, God.
at least you're amusing yourself.
If nobody else laughs, I laugh.
So you can see Meta had this long, and then back then it was Facebook. It had a gigantic run. This was doing great for years and years. There was a big dip here in 18. We had the financial crisis. So everybody knows what this is. This was March of 2020. Everybody knows what this is. So there was a couple of pullbacks, but by and large, this was all trending in the right direction. This was a $385 stock. And then it wasn't. If I go down, this got down. I'm actually going to go look at the bottom. On the weekly, it's not even showing me. It got lower. It got into the 70s. This is saying it's a low of 88. I'm pretty sure it was a low of 78. Either way, from $384, right? This pulled back. That's 76%. And now what did it do immediately after that? I mean, this is a V-shaped recovery. When everybody thought it's the end of the world for Meta, they're done. The next thing they did, I'll just go to this one, was go up 700%. I go to this one, 780%. So, to George's point, what was this? What was this? And what it was when they changed their name to Meta and put out this wacky metaverse where let's be honest, I'm sure Mark Zuckerberg knows he looked like a robot. It was a very strange thing. And the stock, I mean, that's not a little hit. This is one of the large stocks in the stock market. So to take a 76% haircut when you think you own a blue chip stock, the only thing
about it.
The only thing more shocking than that is to buy it at the low, and now you're up 700 or 800%.
Right.
On a mega cap stock. It's crazy.
I mean, but if you think about it, you wonder what really happened. I mean, I'm sorry. They're smarter than that, Tom. They're smarter.
It makes you wonder.
Makes you wonder big time. 76%. How can we get the rats out and then let the cheese grow? So
like we're used to that. We're dealing in small cap, high growth, highly volatile stocks, right? When you're right, our stocks were down to $200 or $300 million market caps. Those almost don't even qualify as small cap anymore. They start to be, micro cap and whatnot. And now they've grown to the other side where they've multiplied so much since the bottom that, some of them are, above the technical definition of a small cap and they're a mid cap. But they're at the very, very, very low end of that part of the spectrum. My point is dealing with those kind of stocks, you expect to see charts like this. That's kind of the deal. You're going to get wrecked. And if you hold on and time it right, you might be going to pull a 5X or a 10X, but that's not how mega cap stocks work. This journey right here was crazy town. So, and in the same time frame, NVIDIA was, running even harder than this. So maybe people weren't looking at this as much, but this was kind of I don't know, unprecedented might be the wrong word, but this is in pretty rare air to see this kind of price action on this size of a stock. So anyway, my point of that is the metaverse was going to be the next big thing until 3D printing was going to be the next big thing. And now I don't think anybody even remembers either of those things at this point. And it's only a few years later. Right, because how many revolutions have we had since then? Some of which are real, right? I mean, I think that the Bitcoin crypto move has happened. It's real. It's a new sector in the market. So that is a game changer. And I'm going to read a bunch of articles. I'll show you how afraid they are of it. I think this AI thing is monstrous. There's going to be winners and losers. There's going to be people who have products or prototypes that end up being of no value whatsoever. But we already see the large language models serving a lot of purposes, and the way they're making agents for them now, they're just going to become, I think the adoption is going to grow and grow and grow. So I think there's room for more than one winner. And the real winners are, you know, George was talking to me before we jumped on the air, picks and shovels. We are the picks and shovels play in this space. And almost without fail, whoever else wins or loses, the picks and shovels guys win. And because we're the power, and that's the bottleneck, ask any executive in any of these big companies that are pursuing high performance computing, their number one concern is where, you know, over the next 5 years, where's our power coming from? That's what they're scrambling for. It has the longest lead time by far. And, you know, it's the scarcest resource from out of the entire chain. So these companies have it, and they're adding and adding and adding. And now they have practice at building out data centers. Not all data centers are the same, right? A high performance computing data center is different than a Bitcoin mining data center, but one can be converted to the other. There's cost to it, but you still have a monumental head start because you have your power agreement, you have your building built, and you have the bones of a data center. So you're already a year and a half or 2 years ahead of somebody trying to start today. And a lot of these companies are going to be converting, some of them already are converting some of their Bitcoin data centers into high performance computing data centers. It's more revenue. It's a better gross profit than Bitcoin right now, which is struggling. Now, if Bitcoin triples in price, obviously that equation gets a little more even. You know, Bitcoin at $180,000 or $200,000, there's probably going to be a lot more gross profit in there. The network.
Did you ever verify if Strategy got into the S&P?
Strategy is not in the S&P.
It sucks, by the way. X.com could be the biggest scam out there. Look what they did to ABTC. Yeah. That's the same thing. They don't, this is that lockup period ends, and people see it. This is a problem. When you see something, sometimes it's even from somebody you trust. But the thing is, trust but verify. Because you see something, say something.
It's information. There's information overload. They're throwing information at us as fast and as furiously as they can. And they don't care if it's right or if it's wrong. They just want to get it out there. So, and a lot of times it's intentionally wrong. It just is what it is. So, you know, we've been fooled on a couple of things. And the market has lately that just weren't real. They didn't happen.
That's why I say we're at a tipping point, Tom.
Right.
I mean, I almost wished, I hate to say it, I almost wish the stock market would crash just so it would be behind us. You know what I mean?
Just get it over with. And I don't think
get it over with.
But unfortunately,
I think it's already happened though, personally.
You can see, look, we almost hit a new all-time high today on the S&P 500. We pulled back, but I mean, we're knocking on the door of a new all-time high. We
Is
had
that right? Carvana got in the S&P? There's just no way.
the what?
Carvana, the car place that delivers you a
Oh,
car.
I don't know. They could
The
be.
biggest scam in America. When cars are about ready to fall apart, the used car industry.
Are you saying they were recently added?
I
Or
don't
at
know.
some
I
point
just
they
saw
were
that
added.
kid.
Yeah, I don't know. We could look. You can look up the components of the S&P 500. So this whole pullback, we had a pullback 5.65%.
It just happened.
But you're right. To your point, George, that does not give people the confidence that we've bottomed out and washed out and capitulated and we're ready for the next leg up, a 5% pullback. But here we sit, like we were on the brink of testing a new all-time high in the S&P 500 today. So that's where it is. And honestly, from my worthless 2 cents, which you would think would be worth 2 cents, I think the next year is going to be very good for the stock market. Now, people are starting to pile on with that opinion. That's the only thing that worries me, is now all of a sudden, all the big financial institutions have changed their mind and they're saying 2026 is going to be awesome. So that would be the one counterpoint I would give, is that when all those guys start to agree on something.
Once again, strategy was passed over from being included in the S&P 500. Next time is March.
Their next shot is March.
Yep.
All right. I think they will ultimately get into the S&P 500, and they're struggling from a different problem right now.
I just don't understand why in the world they would put Carvana, in there. It's just...
And they must have.
Wow.
There's certain criteria, profitability criteria, etc., that has to be met. So at some point in their history, they must have qualified for at least a quarter.
I'll tell you what, it just shows you they just get retail guys. They get them.
Yeah. Well, that's us, and they're getting us. And I mean, I just saw somebody earlier talking about they think James. I think the reason investors are shying away from Mara is management, their compensation, and more possibilities of stock dilution, which they are good at. So those are the stock dilution and management compensation are definitely two of the big complaints in this whole industry of Bitcoin mining. And definitely for Marathon is one of the companies in specific. The financing has changed, though, with the exception of the fact Hive just came out with a $300 million at-the-market offering. I think that's the only at-the-market offering that was opened in the year 2025 by any Bitcoin miner. 2024, quite the opposite. It was madness. It was mayhem. It was at-the-market offering after at-the-market offering. And not little ones like, the market cap's $1 billion and we're doing $1 billion at the market offering. And this was my early problem with IREN. Market cap was $200 million and they were doing a $500 million at the market offering. It's like, how? But guess what? They did what they said they were going to do and they won. So it's about execution.
Dude, this stream is more depressing than I thought.
Is it?
Yes, because of the S&P.
Oh, because of this thing right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're talking about the S&P going a lot higher next year. A lot higher. So that is the new, if you look at most of the big financial institutions, their latest and greatest projection is huge. 2026 is going to be a huge year for the S&P 500. So you can take that with a grain of salt because guys know as well as I do what you can do with stock predictions.
I thought it was interesting. CZ and Michael Saylor met last night for the first time.
Really?
Yeah.
That was the first time.
Yep. I shouldn't say last night, yesterday.
So they keep recycling this. This came out 2 days ago, but really it's just a recycled story. Strategy, which is MSTR Microstrategy, faces possible MSCI index removal, threatening billions in outflows, billions, trillions. A removal could lead to outflows of up to $8.8 billion if other index providers follow suit. So there's just one index, and it's a big one. It's the Morgan Stanley index. And Morgan Stanley is in talks about considering the fact that, you know, this might not be a legit company. It's really just a Bitcoin Treasury company. Michael Saylor is arguing, you know, we have a technology company that provides cash flow, and we also have a Bitcoin strategy that goes well beyond just treasuring Bitcoin. So I don't think they're even going to get knocked out of the Morgan Stanley index. But even if they did, this 8.8 billion is if everybody else followed suit. They got kicked out of they're in the NASDAQ 100. Right? Are they going to get kicked out of that? I don't think so. But this is the hyperbole that gets used to destroy these stocks. And MicroStrategy has been wrecked. You guys know we'll pull that chart up, but this is the 1 week chart. So this is kind of looking at it in a big picture. I mean, look, this, let's add the volume. So you can see this giant volume day, this stock ran, and this was capitulation to the upside. It got to $543. And then, bam, it closed at $421. So from that day to this day, this thing's down 67%. So that was from last November to this November. Really 12 and a half months, down 67%. So there have been, you know, and there was, I sold somewhere where I was at 350-ish. So it was somewhere in here. I was able to get out at break even because I bought at 350 something and I sold when I got back there because I just didn't. I felt like it was overvalued. I did not think it was going to collapse like it did, however. So that part of that trade, and I traded my MicroStrategy for IREN. So, you know, that just happened to be extremely fortunate on my part. That was just very good timing, which is really luck. Timing is luck, in my opinion, but I'll take it. But now, I mean, MicroStrategy is basically trading at the value of its net asset value. So it was doing it was 3x that at its peak, and now it's 1x that. So I don't think it's going to get worse than that. And I do think there's a chance some of these companies are going to recover because there's a giant narrative now that all these companies are done. The treasury companies are over, and that was a fad and it's going to go away. But I'm not sure that's true. I don't think they're all going to survive. There's too many, and too many of them are too small to matter. But MicroStrategy, let's put it this way. Marathon has 53,000 Bitcoin. They have the second most Bitcoin of any publicly traded company in the world. MicroStrategy has 650,000. They literally, you can see, last week they bought 130 Bitcoin to get to 650,000 Bitcoin. I mean, I just don't think they're going anywhere. And I think Bitcoin's is going somewhere. So I think this stock has bottomed, in my opinion.
We're going to pull up. Which is a better value today going forward, BTC or gold? And it was funny because
that's a great one.
CZ no, it was either Sailor or CZ. One of them brought a brick of gold on stage and said, "What is better, BTC or gold?" And he handed him the gold. He goes, "What's better, this or gold?" And then he said, "Is that real or not?" It turned out to be fake.
Every time I read the arguments against Bitcoin, every single argument you can make against Bitcoin is the identical argument you could make against gold. That's just what it is. And you could say, "Oh, well, they make jewelry out of gold." You think gold's worth $4,000 an ounce because they make jewelry out of it? No, it would be worth $10 an ounce. Gold is a store of value, and it is, and that is because we perceive it to be so. And that's the risk you take by holding gold. Now, gold's been considered a store of value for thousands of years, so it has a track record. Bitcoin is fairly new, but it's not even identical. It's actually superior. There is a fixed supply of Bitcoin. There's untold amounts of gold. Right? We have no idea. It's just like oil. We've found more oil in the last 20 years than we thought there was in total. We keep mining gold like crazy. There's going to be 21 million Bitcoin and not one more ever for eternity. So that's fixed. And in reality, actually, somewhere 3, 4, 5 million of those are lost. And once they're lost, they're not coming back. So there isn't even really going to be 21 million. There's probably going to be something like 16 million Bitcoin. And if you have things like this, if you have a Microstrategy that's got 1 million of them, maybe the U.S. government ends up with 1 million of them. They go away pretty fast. This is a very small supply. So I do think, despite 2025 has not been a good year for Bitcoin, but 2023, Bitcoin's up over 100%. 2024, Bitcoin was up over 100%. We're pretty much sideways in 2025. But I think this is a breather before we take back off again. I think we're going to be up another 100+% in 2026. That's my opinion. I think this cycle goes on a lot longer than previous cycles because there are just so many fundamentally different things happening in this cycle. Old Jocks is saying, sold a fair chunk of my holdings to buy the garden flat next door. It's for sister-in-law and my daughter's cousins live there. Family comes first. But see, that's great because you probably made that money and look what you're able to do with it. Now your family lives next door. That's exactly what we're all trying to do here. Better our lives and our families' lives. So congratulations, Old Jock. That's the goal.
Yeah, well, I did the same thing. Old Jack. I sold out. I guess it was October, wasn't it, Tom?
Yeah.
I got out of most of my stocks.
You kept your crypto, but you got out of the stocks.
And that turned out to be the smartest thing I've ever done.
Yeah, that's you got out at a very good time.
I'm building a house. I try to build 2 a year. Most people use a bank. I use my stock holdings.
So we got a couple of, it was the end of the month. We're in a new month now. We got a couple of reports. Where did that one poll end, by the way? I want to just put out the final. Oh, we did a whole nother thing after that. What price will you buy Bitcoin at again? 50K or lower was the winner. Wow. That's not the one I was looking for. We had that. The crypto, is the bull market over? Whoa. So is the bull market over this cycle for Bitcoin? Is a poll that we did earlier in this stream. 57% said no. 43% said yes. We were, for a lot of the time, that was just 50-50-ish. So no pulled ahead in the end, but almost half the people think this cycle's over. So, only time is going to tell who's right on that one, but this kind of tells you where people's minds are at. They're out.
Did you hear this one? That Meta, so if you use Meta to handle your business and they handle your business and you get a lead for, let's say, an electrician, and the electrician wants to, you want to use them. Well, they're going to scan every single email or text message that you get on Meta and then sell ads. So they would show a whole bunch of ads to that person for electricians. Is that not pretty crappy?
But does it surprise you?
No. And actually, I never released Kudab, and now I'm changing Kudab to a social media site, by the way. So I'm going to make Kudab like a Meta, and then Yak Yak like an Instagram. Does that make sense?
To our younger viewers, that makes perfect sense. Some of us a little more challenged in this world of social media.
I just can't. I freaking hate them. I just can't understand. I mean, you just not have enough money? How many billions do you need?
Any revenue stream that they can get legally, they're going to do. That's you could just.
And then Gmail started December 1st. Every single email that you have and document attached is scanned by AI and reported to a proper authorities if need be. So I don't know what that means.
I'm going to address Doug, who asked a good question, because I'm just about to get back into something that I was ultra early on, and I still think it's early, but I am going to start dollar cost averaging in. So Doug asked, Tom, about TMF, the 20-year Treasury yield not coming down after 4 interest rate cuts in the last 2 years. Bought TMF 2 years ago and still at break even. So I was talking about, I don't know if it was 2 years ago, but somewhere between 2 years ago and a year and a half ago, I had bought some TMF. And essentially what TMF is it's a bet that as interest rates go down, the 20-year Treasury yield is going to come down from where it is, which is usually what happens ultimately. But the thing is, and I have an article even today, these yields are unbelievably stubborn. They do not, the 10-year and the 20-year are basically saying the public doesn't believe interest rates are coming down, and it doesn't believe inflation's under control. Let's see if I have this. Here, ING flags upside potential for 10-year U.S. Treasuries. Now, the TMF is reverse the 20-year, but it's the same principle. So Treasuries love that 4 to 4.1% trading range. So the fact that they're still in the same trading range they were 2 years ago after all these rate cuts, temporary breaks below more likely, but a break above has more legs. So they're saying this is probably going to get worse before it gets better. ING analyst sees potential for a breakout in the 10-year U.S. Treasury yield. A decisive move above 4.1% could indicate a more structural change, potentially influencing market trends into 2026. So I'm right now going to start buying into TMF. I think it is going to get worse before it gets better, which is going to allow me to dollar cost average in, I think, between the next 3 to 6 months. And the reason I picked that time frame is there's one thing this article and 3 or 4 other articles I read are getting just totally wrong and almost to the point where they must know they're wrong about it and they're just saying it. We're getting a new Fed chairman in May. Right, Jerome Powell's out. And this administration has made it crystal clear that they want interest rates significantly lower. So the president appoints the next director of the Fed. And we know it was down to a short list of 5. We think we know who it's going to be. And I could just tell you, if the rate cuts don't come before then, and I think a couple of them will, you're going to start to see 50 basis point rate cuts, in my opinion. You're going to see the interest rate move the needle in a way that the 10-year and the 20-year start to react. And the flip side of that is I very strongly believe we're not seeing inflation. This inflation boogeyman, let me find a chart that I believe I have open. So if I look at this over a 5-year, this is the PCE, which is the Fed's preferred index for gauging inflation. So this came out very late. This is September's numbers. We're now in December, but remember the government got shut down. So consensus was this was going to come in at 2.8%. It came in at 2.8%. So here's the last 2 years, right? Inflation skyrocketed in 2022. It started to come down, and by July 2023, we were at 3.3%, and we haven't been above that since then. It's now more than 2 years later. So how long are we going to say there's no sign of inflation, but it's the number one thing we're worried about? Particularly since during every single one of these months, all of these months when it was spiraling out of control, they were saying, I know it seems like there's inflation, but it's transitory. It'll go away and somehow get undone and everything's fine. We don't need to do anything. So they didn't do anything so they continue to be behind. It's just I don't know what goes on in that room. I don't know what kind of politics are being played, but the bottom line is we're going to get a new Fed chair, and anybody that looks at this chart and tells me the number one concern is inflation is seeing a different chart that I am, because we are 2.5 years into inflation coming down drastically and staying there. We're now how many months into this tariff thing that was going to be the end of the world? That was April 2nd. It's December now. This still has not hit. So
that's a good one. I got to think about the answer, Sammy. Real estate. Have you made more money invested in crypto, stock, or real estate? I got to say real estate, but I think about it. It's definitely real estate. I think when you're done, it will be crypto, but right now, real estate's been
you've killed it in
I'm going
real
to be
estate.
honest with you. I am not a good stock buyer, holder, seller at all. I'm just not, I don't like stock. I think it's a manipulated game. The only way you can play stock right now is over multiple years. Don't ever go in and just like you think you got a sure deal. Don't go in with all your money. I would say buy 50% of it and then, then do 20, 20, 20, 20. You know what I mean? That's the one thing that Tom always has told me. And I didn't listen, of course.
It's a dollar cost average thing. And for a lot of the time they're dollar cost averaging, people are calling you a fool and an idiot and an imbecile. But I'll give you an example. Go to.
Or you could use Meta and the crash in Meta. You could use that example because that crash didn't happen overnight. It happened over a period of 2-3 months?
Right. I'm just going to go to here's a stock everybody still hates and we still think it's a disaster. Right? Bitfarms, which in the last cycle got to $9.36.
Here he goes, guys.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I'll make it quick. This stock, right? It recently ran up over $6. So that was a big run up. It has sold off quite a bit since then. So yes, you are down. If you bought everything on October 15th, then you're in pretty bad shape on Bitfarms. But my reality is this is a $2.92 stock. Most of this stock I bought under $1 because it didn't just get under $1. It got under $1 and it stayed there for months and months and months. And then it climbed back over $1 and then it dropped back down under $1 again for months and months and months. And then, this looks like a big, great compared to all this. This is at $1.20. So you're still up way over 100% in this entire period. If you bought anything you bought there, you're up somewhere between 150 and 300% right now. So that's the power of dollar cost averaging on these volatile stocks. But this was a long stretch where, everybody was like, this is a dead stock. It's going to zero. It's going to reverse stock split. It will never recover. This went from 68 cents to over $6. Now it's pulled back to 292. So we'll see where it goes from here.
Someone just asked about, and I'm sorry, let me see who that was. Ethan, about the price for Canada to US. But I have a question. Why has Britain always had a stronger pound than the US dollar? And it was a lot better. Is it just because of the queen or the king or whatever?
It's you can only compare it relative to what it's done in the past because it's all arbitrary. The pound is worth more than the dollar. It always has been.
Why?
It doesn't mean it's stronger than the dollar. It's just like a stock. Think of it like a stock price. Like Cleanspark's at $13 and Bitfarms is at $3. But those have nothing. You got to look at market cap. You know what I mean? The stock price itself is arbitrary other than if you're investing in it, comparing it to itself over time or the two against each other over time. The Canadian dollar actually got all the way up to par with the US dollar. And it's now at like 71 cents, I think, maybe.
76, 78, 73, 70, 72, 380.
70, so call it 73 cents. And it was, and I can't, time flies. I don't even remember this time frame. But in my life, I remember
when Obama was in office, it was 1-to-1.
It was 1-to-1. So that everybody talks about, I'm going to go to this one right here. Trump's Trump's security strategy impact on Bitcoin, gold, and the bond yields. And they talk about how the dollar, this whole article is about how the dollar is at all-time lows and getting destroyed, and it's only going to get worse. Now, if you're comparing the dollar to cryptocurrency or gold, that's true. But if you're comparing the strength of the dollar to the strength of everybody else's currency, we are still, after coming down significantly, we are still at basically 20 to 30-year highs for the US dollar. Right? We're in that neighborhood. And
I can see the euro and the pound getting destroyed.
right. So that's why it's relative. It's like, oh, well, the dollar's getting weaker. Against what? It's not getting weaker against the Canadian dollar. It's not getting weaker against the pound. It's not getting weaker against the euro. It's not getting cheaper against the yen or the yuan. It is getting cheaper. It's getting grossly devalued versus gold, versus Bitcoin, versus the grocery store, right? So that part's reality. But, you know, there's a false narrative here. The fact is, all fiat currency may be struggling compared to other emerging markets like the cryptocurrency world, and I think that's true. But to say the US dollar is weak, and you know, this article talks about this new strategy so dangerous that the US currency might not even be the global standard anymore. And it's like,
I think that's the narrative they're trying to play out right now because of remember the BRICS nation, remember all that? We haven't spoke about that at all.
They're pushing this, and it's foolishness. So
again, I get back to, we are definitely at a tipping point, crossing point for America. Either it's going to go crazy or it's going to go the other way. Is it going to go? I don't think it's going to stay the same, Tom. I think it's either going to go crazy up or crazy down.
You're expecting volatility.
Yeah, I don't know which way it's going because, you know, the elites are smarter than me in this game of finance, and they can play it, and, you know, they got a lot more money, so they can play it longer. But it seems like, as far as like strength goes for a country, it seems like Trump is doing things to strengthen the country.
Right, and that article was about his foreign plan. Basically, is we spend in this budget, we have $1 trillion in defense spending. So the foreign policy is the United States would like all the members of NATO to contribute 5% of their GDP. Understanding we do a lot more than that. And the United States is still almost all the money that NATO has. So, you know, it's a very valuable collaboration, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but it is funded by the United States. And this Trump has come out and said, you know, everybody's in this thing. I mean, honestly, NATO is designed to protect Europe. We're in it because we're friends with Europe and partners with Europe, but it really doesn't, you know, it's not for the United States. It serves no purpose for us, and I'm not saying they shouldn't be in it. I support it completely, but everybody ought to pay their share, and that's not going to crash the US dollar, and it's not going to make people stop trading with the United States, and it's not going to make the US dollar no longer be the world's currency. Those are all that's just fear mongering. It's nonsense.
I have another question, Tom. If we lower interest rates, do the Treasury bills get lowered?
Yes, because a large portion of those, they don't retroactively, but all the short-term bonds, as they mature, those rates go away and the new rates come in. So we're constantly issuing short-term, mid-term, and long-term bonds. So it will bring down our interest, not one-to-one, because there's a lot of long-term stuff out there too, but $6 or $7 or $8 trillion of our debt is short-term. So That's all basically immediately going to go down as rates drop. And that's going to have a huge impact because, unfortunately, although we spend $1 trillion a year on national defense, it's not the biggest line item in our budget. Interest on our debt is. So, for the first time in history.
Right.
So, anybody that thinks we're not lowering interest rates, I would tell them to evaluate the big picture and rethink that line of reasoning. Right? I can't tell you the future, but I can tell you I feel strongly that not only are interest rates going to come down, but we really have absolutely no choice other than to lower them. Otherwise, face catastrophic.
If I say one word, tell me what you guys think of when I say this. One word. Garbage. I want to see if anybody gets garbage.
Garbage?
Somebody will get it. Don't worry.
Well, I know what I think of, but it just relates to this stream. Let me find something real quick.
That didn't take long.
Somebody got it?
Yeah.
Was that what you were going for?
I just said the word garbage. I wanted to know what people thought of when they said garbage. I didn't have a specific word.
There's another revolution.
See? Yeah. ABTC, T-bills, everything.
So here's another article. The dollar is crumbling. Fiat-backed stable coins are next. So the dollar's already screwed, and get ready because the stable coins are about to be screwed.
They're going to be screwed?
Well, this is what they want you to believe. I'm bringing these articles up because this is right. This is the same as the last article. Oh, the dollar's crumbling. Really? Against what? Right.
Well, that's a salacious word.
Right. So they're then saying stable coins have their ups and downs, but it's clear they're one of crypto's biggest success stories so far. While Bitcoin may garner more of the headlines thanks to its constant ups and downs, stablecoins have emerged as the chief workhorse of the decentralized finance ecosystem, helping to shift more than $275 trillion worth of value across the globe. So that's how much we've already done. We haven't even started this game yet, and they've already moved $275 trillion. So wait till we're in the middle of adoption, because we're at the beginning right now. But then they say, however, there are signs the U.S. dollar's status as the world's reserve currency is being eroded. This one's going again. And that could lead to some major consequences for the stablecoin economy, given that its top tokens are pegged to its value. This year, the dollar has experienced a significant decline, losing around 11% in value. What they don't tell you is it's at 40 or 50-year highs over the last 2 years. So yes, it did pull back. We've all been going, please pull back. This is hurting our economy. It's hurting the world's economy. The U.S. dollar, get back to where you were for, forever, not at this ridiculously high price. So its largest decrease in over 50 years, still leaving it well above significantly above the 50-year average. They don't say that, though. This instability is driven by uncertainty around U.S. economic policies and rapidly increasing eye-watering debt. So, okay, that's true. We got a lot of debt. which now stands at a whopping $38 trillion. The U.S. keeps printing dollars, but in the meantime, the world's economic value is being moved elsewhere. So show me the data on that. So here's your BRICS. Basically, all of this is saying at some point, there could be a run on the stable coins. So if, like if you guys are familiar with the run on the bank, that means people lose trust and they all want to get rid of their stable coins. In the case of a bank, they all want to take their cash out of the bank. Well, there isn't enough cash for everybody to take their cash out of the bank. That's not how it works. And with stable coins, they're saying, well, there could be a run on stable coins, and some of the things that back stable coins, even treasuries, if they have 2-year treasuries or 10-year treasuries, they're saying those aren't really liquid, even though they're 1-to-1. If you hold them to maturity, they're not liquid dollar for dollar. But the thing is, does anybody think that we're going to have a 50, 60, 70, 80, 90% run on stable coins? I don't know where that would come from. Nothing like that's ever happened to the real stable coins. Yes, are there some fringe, tiny stable coins, but they're talking about Tether and Circle. And I think this is just a ridiculous article here, dominated by Tether. This is mainly about Tether. They say Tether's going to lose its peg. I doubt it. They're minting money. They make like $8 or $10 billion a year, and they buy gold and they buy Bitcoin. And that's not the stuff that's securing your Tether. That's just theirs because they've made so much freaking money.
Tether's just been unbelievable.
So
remember, I think I won't say that, but I think that Tether is very strong now, and I don't think that was always the case. And I figured out how they did it too.
Right, you were worried 3 years ago. You had some worries, but things have gone in a very different direction.
I think there's bad actors out there. How about that one? But they get paid a lot of money. Gold 36, Bitcoin 64. Which is a better investment, gold or BTC? We got to get another poll up. I'm going to end that one. You got one for me, Tom?
Well, we led with the big poll. We're pretty much split on, do we think this cycle is over? Are we going to is Bitcoin going to hit a new all-time high in 2026? Let's see if that's a different outcome. So our high was 126,000 and change in 2025. And it doesn't look like we're going to take that out by the end of the year. Having said that, you guys know how this works. There's almost a full month left. Anything can happen. Somebody had mentioned in the comments, Kramer, the Floodmeister. So I wanted to bring up this article, and I talked about this at the beginning of the show. IREN investors mull outlook after $3.6 billion capital raise as Jim Kramer says sell. So Jim Kramer has put a sell on IREN. This is misleading. They didn't really borrow $3.6 billion because they paid off $1 billion of debt with this. So they just swapped debt due next year for debt due 5 or 6 years from now. So that's not increasing your debt. It's just swapping it out for much better debt. Much better debt structure. So that was actually a really great move. Now, it was a couple of $1 billion. They really did raise a couple of $1 billion. And they've got a lot of infrastructure to make. They also have a $10 billion contract for high performance computing. And that $10 billion is only on 200 megawatts. So, right, they have a 3 gigawatt pipeline of power. 200 megawatts is throwing off $10 billion in 5 years. So imagine what this company is going to do. And that's why, everybody's saying IREN has pulled back dramatically. There is no question about it. And they just raised a bunch of money. This is a very capital intensive industry they're in, but the gross profits on this stuff is massive. The lead they have on the rest of the field is huge. So I think they're just going to be a winner. I mean, it was only last month. I would say everybody here thought IREN to 100 was inevitable, and not everybody, but the majority of people.
Were you going to talk about IREN? Somebody said you were going to talk about IREN.
This is what I was going to talk about, is that Jim Kramer said sell IREN, and I want to show you, they put out, so to get more specific, so I'll just finish this and then I'll go to the press release. Jim Kramer, quote, sell any company now that is doing a financing a la IREN, said Kramer, warning that heavy issuance echoes late cycle patterns he associated with the 1999 to 2000. So people keep trying to say we're in an AI bubble like we were in a .com bubble, and all I can tell you is everybody should go do their due diligence. If you think what's happening with the AI stocks right now is what was happening with the .com stocks, do yourself a favor and go back and look at the data and look at what those companies looked like, because one of these things is nothing like the other. So do your own due diligence. That's all I'll say about it. I do not believe we are in an AI bubble. I think we're going to end up in an AI bubble because that's how things work. New technology creates a bubble, but it hasn't even started yet, which is why I would not consider selling my IREN in the 40s.
I'm going to close this poll quickly, so vote if you want to. If you don't, I understand.
So it's tracking almost identically to the last one. So I think yes, and I think it's going to be significant. And I'm going to point to the biggest Bitcoin bear. Actually, there's a couple of people that you could argue, or organizations that you could argue they're undeniable, monstrous bears on Bitcoin. And I want to show you what they have to say. So give me a second to find that. JP Morgan. Who hates Bitcoin more than JP Morgan? Maybe there's a couple of people out there. This is a running thing. Our weekly or twice a week update on the terrible things JP Morgan has to say about Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners. However, even JP Morgan maintains Bitcoin's gold-linked target at $170,000 despite the recent drop. The bank's volatility-adjusted Bitcoin to gold model still points to a theoretical price around $170,000 over the next 6 to 12 months. So JP Morgan's putting a price target of $170,000 on Bitcoin. The I Hate Bitcoin company, they own this is their wheelhouse, and they're predicting 170 for whatever that's worth.
Okay, which will double next? Which company will double next?
I got to find this next article for you, George. Same topic.
I threw a whammy in their Hive, by the way. I'm putting in, oh, geez, we only got 4.
Yeah, they only let you do 4.
They need 5.
I know
5 would
a
be
lot
so
of
much
times
better.
people wish there was more options in these, but they don't let you do any more than 4. All right, ready? Here's some news from your buddy, George.
Ooh.
Ripple's CEO, bold call. Bitcoin to hit $180,000 in 2026. Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse predicts Bitcoin will reach $180,000 by the end of 2026. So you can see I'm not living in my own bubble out there thinking this cycle is going to be longer. You've got the CEO of XRP saying the same thing. Bitcoin's going to hit $180,000 next year. You've got JP Morgan, which any shot they can take at Bitcoin, they do. They've got a price target of $170,000 for Bitcoin in 2026. So this is not some wacko fringe position. And I understand a lot of people are looking at the 4-year cycle, and that's why this poll is still pretty close to 50-50. You can make a compelling argument either way, and only time is going to tell which one is right. But I happen to think we're setting up for a very nice 2026. And I'm not the only one.
I don't know. I'm losing faith in 26 quickly.
Are you, George?
Yep. I am, actually. There's just so many issues in the United States. And I think crypto has become political, guys, and I'm sorry to say that. Whoever voted ABTC is whacked out of your mind. I'm going to tell you something.
Oh, you included that?
I did, because I voted it, yes.
That was...
I actually think they're going to win. I honestly believe they will double.
Well, they just dropped so dramatically.
Right. That's the reason why it's $2 to $4, dude. I mean, come on.
Yeah, this was a $7 stock a couple months ago. So now
I say that, I wish we could take a nap until the 10th of next week. Because I think the 10th is going to be the beginning. I'm praying. The 10th is the beginning of this.
What I will say is the 10th is a huge day. We're going to get an announcement from the Fed. We're going to get Jerome Powell and his talking points. And the market usually has a big reaction one way or the other.
I hope it goes down immediately after. I hope it goes down. So then 30 minutes later, it takes off.
I think it's going to go down regardless. I think it's going to be a sell the news. Because we know we're getting our rate cut. So that's already priced in. But we have not yet heard all the awful things Jerome Powell's going to say next on the 10th.
Dude, I don't even think I got $5,000 into ABTC. I remember I had $6,300. That's all I got into it. Sour, if I had your money, I'd burn mine.
And to be fair, Sour Melon Gaming asked me earlier, give me any justification for their market cap. And I wouldn't justify their market cap. And their market cap was at, $6 or $7 billion a few months ago. And I think all those market caps are ridiculous for that company. But I also think that these stocks moved in ridiculous ways. So I don't think from a fundamental standpoint, I agree with Sour Melon Gaming. They're not even diversifying into high performance computing. They are the last standing all in 100% Bitcoin miner. And they keep all their stuff and they got to pay their parent company rent to host it all. So I don't think long term I own no ABTC, but on that wild drop, it's not unthinkable that it's going to pull a quick double, especially since that drop was on fake news. So we'll see what happens.
I'd love to stay and talk, but I'm hungry and I got to drive a half an hour to where I'm going to eat.
All right, well, let's wrap it up. What's this poll? How'd we do here?
How are we doing?
Did it? We must have got a couple of votes for.
Yeah, no.
Oh, ABTC is actually on fire.
Yeah, you see, we got smart people in here, Sour.
And I won't. Sour Melon Gaming. I would never make an argument to try and justify their market cap. So I agree with you on that. I know. The stock market's irrational, and these stocks get irrationally low when times are bad, and they get irrationally high when times are good. So nothing would surprise me is all I'm saying. And it looks like IREN is winning this poll, but it's pretty close. Hive's the only one people don't have faith in. But George thinks Hive's going to 100. So sometime in the next 1 to 2 years. So we'll end that poll. This was a tough day. Oh, I would be remiss. Go to this. This is what happened this week. So we'll wind it out on this. This week was not pretty. It wasn't a nightmare. Right? We've seen weeks worse than this, even recently. And remember, I'm just going to show you quickly. This was last week. So you got to put some of this in perspective, right? You had stocks up 30, 40, 50, 55% last week. So, okay, we pulled back 5 or 6 or 7% for a lot of these. Now, it was a bad week for Bitfarms, 16%. Another bad week for BTDR, which is already trailing, and it had a worse week than most. But Bitcoin down 2%. These guys down 5, 6, 7%. There's nothing shocking here. And most of all of this was today, really. So it wasn't a good week. It wasn't a good week for Bitcoin. And it felt like we're ending on a sour note because we actually ran. I'm going to go back to the chart. We ran up. We had this nice, right from December 1st, which was Monday. We were down here at 83,000. We ran up $10,000, $11,000. And now we've pulled back, but not all the way back. And so, to me, directionally, this is why I feel like, there could be good things ahead, but we'll see. We could retest some of these lower lines. Right now, the green line is holding today. So that would be nice. If we could bounce off of that and maybe have a good weekend for once. And the thing is, if we don't have a good weekend, when we have a bad weekend, that's when the ETFs jump in on a Monday and buy. Because that's their chance on low volume for Bitcoin to drift down over the weekend. And then they can jump in and buy it Monday morning. So we'll see what happens. In the meantime, everybody have a fantastic weekend. Thank you guys for joining us on the live stream. Don't forget to smash the like button on your way out. If you enjoy this content, you can subscribe to the channel. Everybody have a great weekend. Go Bitcoin.